Hi everybody and welcome to today's Introduction to Crowdfunding for Sport webinar. It is a ridiculously hot day today, as I'm sure it is where you are. So we are going to keep this to hopefully the set time of half an hour. So we've allowed half an hour to 45 minutes for this session. Fingers crossed we're going to be as swift as we can to make sure that you guys can go and actually enjoy your lunch breaks and go and cool down as well. So today we're going to be looking at crowdfunding, what it is, how to crowdfund for your sports organisation, and we're also going to hear from Nadine from Sport England. She'll talk through a couple of those all-important extra funds available for eligible projects. We're also going to hear from Dan as well, a successful project owner that has recently run an incredible crowdfunding campaign for the Victoria Park Skatepark. So we'll hear about his experience, what worked well, what he found difficult, if anything. So before we do get started, there are just a few housekeeping rules to go through, or housekeeping points, I should say. As I mentioned, it's incredibly hot everywhere. So you'll probably find, as we are working from home at the moment, those of us that are hosting this webinar, windows will be open, fans may well be on. So there may be some unexpected interruptions. So please do bear with us. If you find that there is an issue with the internet, if there's any problems with the image freezing or sound, then please do just head up to your browser and you should be able to hit the refresh button there, and you should come straight back into the live room. You are able to ask questions. It is an interactive session. So if you look over on the right of your screen, you should see a chat box. There's a couple of messages in there from myself at the moment. Please feel free to ask any questions into that chat box, and we'll get to them at the end of this session. You might find some of your questions get asked throughout the course of us going through the slides, for example, but we will loop back round and go through any of those questions at the end as well. So without further ado, I would love to be able to welcome Nadine onto the screen. We can have a little talk through the different funds that are available. Hi, Nadine, how are you?
Hi, Zoe, I'm good, thank you. Keeping cool?
Good, good. I am going to move both of us up to the other part of the screen. There we go.
Cool.
So you're going to talk through the two different funds available from Sport England, aren't you? So that's the Places and Spaces Fund and the Active Together Fund. Well, I'll hand over to you.
Cool, thanks, Zoe. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Hopefully you'll pick up some great tips on running a successful crowdfunder campaign and also learn how to access the funds we have available. So as Zoe mentioned, we have two funds available through our collaboration with Crowdfunder. Our first is our Active Together Fund. This is a 7.5 million lottery fund, and we launched this back in May 2020 in response to the COVID pandemic. But now, as we're learning to live with COVID, the fund now focuses on recovery, reinvention, and building resilience. So typical projects could cover fundraising for general works or maintenance, coping with the increased demand for activity following the pandemic, and also working through the cost of living and the emerging energy crises. Through Active Together, we've supported over 600 campaigns, and with lots of budget left, we're looking for even more clubs and organisations to support. Our second fund is our Capital Fund, which is called Places and Spaces, and this is a 7 million lottery fund. And the focus of this fund is to increase participation, diversify audiences, and bringing people together, all in the name of the upcoming Commonwealth Games. So typical projects for this could include creating a welcoming and accessible space for people to get active, or to enhance or improve existing facilities to encourage participation in your local community. With both of our funds, they're available nationwide, and with match funding up to 50% available to a maximum value of £10,000. We understand for many people that this is probably your first dive into crowdfunding, so there's plenty of support and resources available through Crowdfunder, so do tap into it. I'll now hand over to Zoe, who will discuss things in a bit more detail. Thank you.
Thanks, Nadine. I just got a bit slide happy then and had moved on to the additional slide, which I added in there. So just to recap on those two funds from Sport England, we've got the Active Together Fund and the Places and Spaces Fund on this slide. I wanted to add in as well just the British Cycling Places to Ride slide. So we have additional money as well. Obviously, you guys in attendance today are sports organisations. Some of you may well have a crossover with British Cycling, their particular fund as well, as Dan has, our guest PO that's speaking later on. So do make sure that when you're looking at all those funds that you've been matched with when setting up your crowdfunder, that you're putting in applications for all of those funds that are a good fit and that you see yourselves as eligible for. So that might be from Sports England, one of the ones Nadine mentioned, and it could also be from British Cycling as well, especially if you are something like a skate park or a multi-use facility. When you are looking to apply for extra funding, you want to make sure that on the certain section that asks you to put in your extra funding information when setting up your page, so that will be in the admin and the setup of your page, you will be asked to tick this box that you can see highlighted. That will allow us to share your project details with our funding partners. If this isn't ticked, unfortunately, we can't make those matches. Do make sure to put in your postcode and also let us know who you're going to be working with. So who are the beneficiaries of your project, who's going to benefit, and what are those potential outcomes. So whether that's in increased activity, whether that's tackling vulnerability, mental health issues within your community, make sure that all of those potential outcomes are ticked, and we will make sure that our computer system's matching you accordingly. Just to quickly go through as well how the extra funding works, and in particular this is for those Sport England and British Cycling pots of money. So you will put in your application, and we're basing this on you've set up your crowdfunder, you're about to go live, you've actually put your application in place and you've been approved for that funding. So you're then going to launch and you're going to start crowdfunding. You're going to need to reach 25% of your initial target in order to release that extra funding pledge from Sport England. That will land on your page and it will go towards your target raise as well. Once that lands, you'll keep crowdfunding in order to reach that 100% of your target and secure the extra funding along with all of the money raised from your crowd. You can see here in the table that there is a required supporter number depending on what your target, your initial target reach is. So when we talk about required supporters or unique supporters, you might see it listed in different places. We're talking about individual banking footprints, individual email addresses. So you will need, for example, if you have a target of up to £5,000, you're going to need 25 unique supporters to pledge onto your page and reach 25% of that 5,000 to release the pledge from Sport England. Those unique supporters required do go up dependent on your target. So just bear in mind when you get your pledge kind of criteria through and you've been approved that you are working towards those milestones to release the pledge to your page. A great way of rallying your supporters around you to hit those milestones is by posting updates to your page. Let people know what's going on, what milestones that you need to reach, what exciting fundraising has been going on, and keep everyone on the journey with you to help rally to get those milestones hit. Okay, so before we talk about our exciting new partnership with Strava, I think the best thing to do is actually go back to basics a little bit and actually watch a little video all about how to crowdfund successfully.
Hello everyone. So how does crowdfunding work and what is it? Well, crowdfunding is a great way to raise money and awareness for your organisation by engaging with your community. What you're going to do is create a crowdfunding page on our online platform. And don't worry if you're not too tech savvy, it's very easy to use, very user friendly. You're going to create a page that looks something like this one on the right hand side. And then you're going to promote that campaign to your crowd and your community. And they'll then make pledges and donations on your page, and that's how you get funded. So it's really important to make an engaging page. It needs to target the whole community. So try not to fall into that trap of just writing something that's geared towards your club members, because they're most likely going to be engaging with you already. So you really want to reaching out to the wider audience, potentially people who aren't already connected to your sport or your club, and really make the most of crowdfunding and create that awareness of your organisation. So when you're creating your page, what we always recommend is start with some key headlines and organise the content into a very readable order. So if you start with the headline of who you are and outline who you are as a club, your impact in the community and why you're crowdfunding. So for a lot of you, it will still be the effects of that COVID has had on your organisation, but equally some people are now starting to get over that, and it may be a completely different type of project. So it's important that you just explain what you're actually crowdfunding for and also how you plan to spend the money. So as a potential supporter, you would be much more likely to pledge or donate to a campaign if you can see the direct impact that your financial contribution will make. Once you have all that information collated, it's time to make your page just look more engaging, more appealing. And the best way to do that is with images and videos. So you can add images in between to the page, in between the text, to break up those blocks of text that you should have. And it also helps to summarise and reflect the key elements of your campaign and show the personality of your club. So what also helps with that, as well as images, is a short video. So 1 to 2 minutes is absolutely plenty. You just want to grab the audience's attention and tell them in a nutshell what your project is all about. And it gives that opportunity to actually connect and engage with the viewers of your page. So it's really important to make sure that you're happy with your page before you go live, but also before applying for the extra funding. So whenever you apply for your extra funding, which you'll do via your project dashboard, the relevant sports organisation will review your page and give you some feedback potentially, and just make sure your page has got everything on it that it needs to be a successful campaign, and before deciding whether to give you a pledge for extra funding or not. Now, Crowdfunder is the UK's top rewards-based crowdfunding platform, as opposed to just purely donations only. So, and really, it's on top of the standard donation that you'd perhaps obviously associate with traditional fundraising. You add these rewards to take your campaign to the next level. So rewards tend to encourage larger and more pledges and enable you to attract pledges from outside your network. So you want to get really inventive and creative with your rewards as much as you can. So try to offer a range of rewards targeted at different audiences. So your members might be tempted by, say, a one-to-one coaching session, or you could offer sponsorship or advertising space to large donors. And then you want to think about those in the wider community who don't necessarily have a connection with your club already, but you want to think about how you can get them to pledge. So what you can do is speak with local businesses who may want to support your campaign. Rather than a financial contribution, or in some cases as well as, they can offer products or services to use as rewards. And offering these at a slight discount means that anyone in the area will be keen to make a pledge to grab themselves a bargain, an exclusive offer. So on the page here, you can see we've got some great examples of rewards that we've seen, such as on the right-hand side there, we've got 2 hours of conversational Greek lessons. In the middle at the bottom, we've got a fish and chips voucher. And then up at the top left, we've got Power Auto's MOT voucher. So you can see there's a bit of things that are totally unrelated to sport, but that is making it appealing much to a much wider audience. Now, another great thing that you can do with a sports crowdfunding campaign is to use our multiplier feature. It's really effective for sports clubs. It allows people to essentially fundraise on behalf of your project. So perhaps you might have some individuals that want to do something special to raise funds for the club, like a sponsored swim or run a marathon. Or perhaps you have different teams or squads within your club who fancy a bit of competition to see who can raise the most or cycle the furthest or run the furthest. It's a great way to get more people involved in promoting the campaign and tapping into their personal networks, so reaching an even wider audience, and it can add a great competitive element to a campaign too. So you can see this example on the screen now was run by Spencer Lacrosse Club in 2021, and they had 44 fundraisers, so 44 individuals, each with their own fundraising page, and all the money that they raise via there feeds into the main project page. So it's a really great way to get people truly engaged with your fundraising efforts. So crowdfunding works and sports go really hand in hand very well. Sports crowdfund really well. So you can see here there's a selection of different types of projects, and that's just a very small handful. So they range from speed skating to swimming to gymnastics. Sports clubs are often at the heart of the community, and by definition you have a group of potentially competitive people who directly benefit from the project. So whatever sport it might be, it crowdfunds really well, and you really want to have that common goal in mind and all crowdfund together. One of the next steps you can take, the most important steps, is to use our online learning facility. So we've got a free online course specifically geared for crowdfunding sports clubs, and that will give you even more detail about behind the basics that I've just gone over now, telling you how to create the perfect page. There's lots of tips on how to actually run your crowdfunder and pull it together. So definitely go on and do that online learning course after this webinar, and then go on to help create your perfect page and apply for the funding. So best of luck to you all.
Okay, well, hopefully that was some food for thought for you guys that are here today. As my colleague mentioned, crowdfunding for sports can work really, really well, especially if you do utilise that multiplier function and actually pit your club members against one another, or do a collective fundraising kind of mission between you. You might want to set some challenges, for example. We have recently partnered with Strava, which makes this really, really quite exciting. So when people are setting up fundraisers on your behalf or a part of your multiplier function, so by that I mean you've set up your project, you've selected to be a multiplier, you will see on your page that there's a little tab that people can click on, which is Become a Fundraiser, and they will all have their own little pages where their fundraisers are held, and all of the money they raise, all of their supporter numbers will filter onto your main page. So what these fundraisers can do is they can actually link their Strava accounts with their Facebook, with their crowdfunding page, and it will enable you and those looking at the page to actually view their progress. And it works really well if you're having some kind of competitive element. So it might be that you are training for a marathon. It might be that you're doing a certain steps challenge within a set amount of days, for example, over the live crowdfunding campaign. So have a little think about how you can put some of the ownership of the fundraising into the club members' hands, or even the youth squad, for example, get them involved with their school friends, their team members. Maybe you want to hold a big fundraising day. But that is a really exciting new partnership that we've got, which actually just elevates all of those fundraisers a little bit. The other thing to mention is to make sure that you are, when setting up your crowdfunding pages, you are selecting the correct structure for your organisation. So lots of you here today will be sports clubs that might be run in a volunteer basis, or you might have, you might be a not-for-profit organisation. When setting up your crowdfunding page, you will be directed and prompted to actually select the correct organisational structure for your club. This will be really helpful when you go to then set up your crowdfunding wallet, which is something you need to do to be able to receive any of those extra funds. So make sure that you are getting all of those kind of documents of evidence and things in place early on if you require them. And that'll all be through the prompts that are within the setup of your page, to make sure that those sections are as seamless and as easy as possible for you. You need to have a few little bits to upload. And the other thing to bear in mind as well is just fee structure. So as a not-for-profit organisation, there won't be any platform fees, but we do have transaction fees, which all transactions across the whole of the platform are subject to. So we will put the fee information into the follow-up email along with the replay to this. Just have a little check where you're going to fall into that structure, and make sure that you plan to absorb those fees or any fees associated with your crowdfunding campaign as part of your initial target. Okay, maybe 5 to 7% above what you're thinking of raising, because Ideally, you want to come away with the amount that you wanted to raise, and you want those fees to be absorbed within that. Okay, so learning and support, again, my colleague touched on that a little bit. We have some really, really brilliant resources available for all of you to use, and these are all free resources on our website. So we have webinars such as this, we have drop-in sessions every week. You can book onto them via Eventbrite, pop along, you can ask questions, you can hear from other project owners as well. That's really useful kind of peer learning and peer support. We've got brilliant online learning guides and our wonderful knowledge hub as well. All of this information we will pop into the follow-up email, but definitely check out the learning guides and the knowledge hub first. Make sure you're setting up your crowdfunder with all of the information that you need to make sure it is a success. We've got brilliant tailored email advice as well, and a customer support team based down here in Cornwall. It is a small team. It may take a little minute for them to get back to you, so always check the help centre first, because you may well find the answer that you're looking for, and a live project dashboard as well, so you can monitor all of your activity. You can see what's going on with your crowdfunder and manage all of the aspects of it whilst it's live as well. Okay, so what I would love to do now is actually bring Dan onto the screen so we can hear a little bit about crowdfunding from someone who's been there and done that. Hi, Dan, how are you?
Hey, Zoe. Yeah, all good. Thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Melting a little bit, but all right. So you've recently kind of launched, you've actually recently closed, although you're always on, which is another thing that projects can do. You guys have had a really successful raise, haven't you, over the last few weeks? Would you tell us a little bit about your projects, please, Dan?
Yeah, sure. So in Bristol, there's a skate park called Victoria Park Skatepark, which is based in a lovely park in central Bristol, but the skate park itself is terrible. It was built about 11 years ago. It was a phase one of a two-phase project. Because of the complete joke of a skate park that phase one was, they never bothered finishing phase two. So nothing flows. There's no real way of skating it, and so it's just become this little bit of an eyesore that just is redundant, essentially. And off the back of a previous fundraiser that I ran for another skate park in Bristol, it felt like a good opportunity to sort of keep the community galvanized and sort of try and fix this park as well. And yeah, so it was essentially just the crowdfunding was the last sort of pot of money that we had available to tap into. So we did all the grant fundraising first, managed to raise 130k through various other sources, and this was the final sort of like, let's see if we can get a last 20 odd k from the public just to get us up to 150k, which is essentially like the right amount of money for the size of the space.
Amazing, thank you. I'm just going to quickly share a link actually to your project page into the chat. I highly recommend that people go and look at it. One of the things that stuck out to me was obviously your amazing video with Ricky, who I've got young kids, so Aunt Ninja is a massive thing in our house, so that was quite exciting. Yeah. But not only that, I mean, it's so engaging, and you had an amazing array of rewards there. Did you find that was quite an easy thing to source from your kind of community, or how did you go about getting those rewards?
Yeah, fair. I mean, essentially the skateboard community sort of works on a lot of bridge building and a lot of back scratching, and having been involved in that community and that scene for quite a long time now, I always, I guess, make sure that I keep people on side so that if I ever need to ask for some favors such as this, they're normally happy to do so. And it'll be vice versa, you know, if I can help them out with filmmaking or something like that, it's a two-way street. So that's one element. Social media is massive and played a huge part in just being able to reach people, both like people that I'm already connected with, but also further afield. And loads of, I just put out, before I even started the crowdfunder, I put out a post saying, this is the plan. Can anyone donate any rewards? And loads of people, not even from the skate scene, got in contact. And it was everything from tiny little things that, you know, just shows that they care and that they're passionate about the project, through to, you know, much larger scale stuff that can help make significant money. And they all kind of feel as important as each other, because it's just someone giving whatever they can. It didn't all happen at the start. So it took the project to be launched and gather momentum, but people kept on getting in contact and offering stuff, and that really helped.
Definitely. And I think you've hit the nail on the head there as well. I think especially when it comes to sport and obviously within that skateboarding, it's cementing yourselves within your wider community. And I think when you have done that over years, or you know your importance within the community, people are really happy to get behind you in any way that they can. And it might not be financial, it might be a reward, it might be a massive shout out if they've got a large reach, for example, but drip feeding rewards onto the page, so when more people kind of come through with rewards and gifted to you, is a really lovely thing to do as well. It just keeps it exciting for people that are viewing your page. And it also makes you feel nice, I imagine, as a project owner, to have more and more people kind of offering things up. What kind of key piece of advice would you give to people that are thinking about crowdfunding at the moment?
It's all about trust, really. Being genuine, being authentic, being honest, finding a project, or the project needs to have genuine backing. And you could, like, we sort of did a survey monkey beforehand to check that people were passionate about the project, and to get some facts and figures based on, I think we had about 300 responses, and it was like 99% of people agreed that this thing needed to happen. So that always gives you a good sort of platform to build from. But yeah, trust is massive. If people are going to put their hand in their pocket, they need to sort of know who the person is behind the project. They need to know that this is a legitimate project and it's going to actually go somewhere, and it's not just going to be 20 quid that they never see again. And that comes from a few things. I guess it comes from being around for a while and having done stuff in the community that you're working in, and being as honest and as sort of genuine in any sort of comms. So yeah, we made the video of Ricky and then followed it up with some sort of quite honest and open piece to cameras where it just explains in a bit more detail, and then all of the written content and the the blurb that went with any social post, trying to treat that like it's the first time someone's come across the project, because it's easy as the person that's putting all of this out there to sort of think, oh, people have read and followed all this and they'll understand what I'm going on about. But if you almost sort of imagine that someone might just suddenly have come across this for the first time, and if you just go straight in with some niche bit of information that they don't really understand, they're not going to grab their attention. And just being thankful, relentlessly thankful for everything. Because, like, for them, you know, for most people that are, or a lot of people that are donating, yeah, they care, but they're not as invested as you are. And so, like, it is money out of their pocket at a time when money's tough as it is. And so just being as grateful as possible to everyone that helps.
I love that. That's great advice. I think for you guys as well, you were brilliant with things like updates on your page, just making sure that you are kind of keeping those supporters along for the journey, and just kind of being transparent on the page. Like you said, you know, people, you're looking to people outside of your initial community. So that might be outside of your club membership, that might be outside of your skate community. And you're trying to connect with those people that, yes, want to see it happen. And as you mentioned, might not really understand what that entails or at what stage you are in the project. So making sure you're being really transparent and honest and genuine, I think, are really, really key pieces of advice. And thankful. I love that. Yeah, relentlessly thankful. Yeah. But it pays off. People like to feel that their money's doing good. And if you can let them know that it is, then that's all the better. Just having a little look at your figures here on this slide. So you guys raised almost £23,500 so far from 302 supporters. So that in itself just tells how much of a big deal it is for your community. That's large supporter numbers there that have backed you. And you actually had 2 separate pots of extra funding money, didn't you, from Sport England and British Cycling. Just wanted to reiterate to those that are here today, you can have multiple pots of money. So if you've been matched with lots of different funding partners and you think they're a good fit, please do put in those multiple applications. It's a fairly straightforward process, isn't it, Dan? You mentioned you've done grant applications and things in the lead up. How does it compare doing an application via the crowdfunder page versus a grant application?
I mean, of all the bits of work you're going to do for this project, this is the easiest bit of work for the largest sum of money by a mile. Yeah, it takes 10 minutes, and it, you know, for me, it was over half the budget. Amazing. Just around half the money. So, like, yeah, and you sort of do it. Because I'd done a crowdfunder before, but for a different platform that didn't offer these things. So that was the incentive to come here, but also I did it not really thinking that it would work. You're just sort of like, I'll give it a go and maybe we'll get lucky. And then when both of them came in, it was like, okay, that's a real serious good reason why you'd want to sign up for this stuff. So yeah, it was good. It really helped. I mean, I would say one thing that was not a sort of issue, and this is definitely like first world problems, but the timing of the second one was a bit unfortunate, because we had about 3 weeks left to raise about just over 5k. And I had this whole strategy mapped out, events, different people were going to launch stuff at different times. And then literally out of nowhere, one morning I woke up and there was just bang, 5k in the pot from places to ride. And it was obviously, I was buzzing, but also I then needed to kind of rethink how I was going to approach the rest of the thing to try and then keep the momentum going, which is why we ended up getting 23k instead of 20. So it was all good, and I'm definitely not complaining. And I phoned them up and I said, look, this sounds like the most snobbish thing to say, but I guess it would have been good to sort of if they put that in at the end, I reckon I'd have raised the 5k away, and then we would have got 25k. But
I mean, that is quite first world problems. You are right.
Big time. And I'm aware.
I woke up, there was loads of money in my crowdfunder, and I thought,
totally. I sound like an idiot saying it.
No, not at all. But I completely understand that. You've obviously put the planning of activity in place. So it's then kind of thinking, okay, how do I almost redirect this and make the most of this? Now it's a different narrative, isn't it? Basically, that you're going back to your supporters with. So what's brilliant, I guess, as a takeaway from that is making sure that people who are running their crowdfunders are using things like that live dashboard and being reactive to all the different events that are going on, whether that's things happening on your crowdfunder and big pledges coming on, or whether that's things that you've got going on outside of that, your events and your fundraising that you're doing, shouting about it on the crowdfunder as well. So keeping all of that kind of reactive throughout the course of the live crowdfunder is ace. But you guys have done an incredible job. You absolutely stormed it. And hopefully people will look at your page and take some really good inspiration, because it ticks all of those boxes for a really successful crowdfunder. So well done, you.
Wicked, nice one. Thanks for the help.
No worries. Well, what I'm going to do is open the floor up. If Nadine would like to come and join us, please, and see if we've got any questions coming through. We've had a few come through a little bit earlier, so I'll just jump into the questions now. Okay, so we've had this one from Nikesh. This is for you, really, Nadine. Will Sport England match fund a project they have already funded?
Okay. No, we wouldn't. We wouldn't match fund the projects that we've already supported, because there'd be no obvious need. But if a club or organisation wanted to crowdfund for something completely different, then we would absolutely consider it.
Okay, thank you very much. This one in from Chris, it's just really kind of questioning the extra funding versus that target. So to try and get £10,000 from Sport England, so as an extra funding pledge, does our target have to be 20k? Then we raise 10k and Sport England matches. Essentially, yes. So Sport England match up to 50% of your initial target. So your target needs to be set in place when you put that application in. So if you're hoping to receive a pledge of £10,000 from Sport England, your target would need to be 20,000. And there's a few other kind of stipulations, isn't there, Nadine, in terms of where your project is? Because as I mentioned, it's up to 50%. So you might want to be a bit careful with that part of it.
Absolutely. We would pledge anywhere from 30 to 50%, depending on what you're eligible for. But if anyone was interested in checking what they were eligible for beforehand, then feel free to contact us at internalcaf@sportengland.org, and we can have a conversation on that.
In fact, let me pop your email address into the chat box, and then people can have a little, bear with me 2 seconds. People can contact you directly. I think that's a great idea, because quite often there's real specific questions about eligibility. Okay. From Carl, does the extra funding appear as the total raise when you reach 25% figure, so it will encourage more donations? Absolutely. So this is the reason it's set out as it is. You start crowdfunding, hit that 25% from your set amount of supporters, and that pledge from Sport England will land on your project page. Essentially, Sport England become one of those supporters. The money goes into your target raise, and it becomes momentum then to go back out to your supporters and say, look, we've done it. We've got that pledge on our page. Now help us secure it by hitting our target. So yes, that's exactly how it's designed to motivate your crowd.
It worked as well. Definitely
it does work,
well.
doesn't it, Dan? Yeah.
Just gives you another thing to talk about. Like, you kind of need that new angle and some momentum, and yeah, it definitely helps. If people can see a large chunk of money that's like growing every time they come back to the page, it definitely helps.
Yeah. It is good. And that's why it's always worth putting in that application just before, like when you're ready to go live, but before actually going live. So get your page to a really good space where you're confident and happy with it. Put the application in then, and then if you're approved, you've already got that to shout about when you launch, which again is really exciting for people to know that it's already a credible kind of, you know, crowdfunder, Sport England or whoever are behind it. So let's also get behind it. Okay. Is there a danger that multiplier campaigns can distract from the main campaign? I would say in our experience, no. If anything, I mean, they enhance it essentially, because as I mentioned earlier, you're being able to put some of the ownership of that fundraising into your club members' hands or your community members' hands. I've not experienced it detracting at all. Wouldn't you agree, Nadine? It actually kind of can really enhance the projects.
Absolutely. We've seen quite a few multiplier projects now, and they've really helped campaigns to reach, if not surpass, their target. So they're a really helpful tool.
Wonderful, thank you. Question in from Stuart. If fundraising has already started, can we use that towards the total, and how do we show that as unique individual donations? It is a slight tricky one. You can pay money onto your crowdfunder from your organisation itself. Be mindful if you're doing that it doesn't want to be large sums of money. It wants to be the odd kind of little bit here and there because you've done a fundraiser as part of the crowdfunder. It would only appear as one supporter, i.e. your organisation. You would also need to make sure that you had an audit trail. So if you were approved for extra funding, that could be checked by our funding partner. So the advice would be to not put money onto your crowdfunder from retrospective fundraising. Do everything as part of the crowdfunding campaign. So maybe draw a line under any previous fundraising and really concentrate on what events, what fundraising you're going to do as part of this current campaign. Would you have anything to add on that, Nadine?
Absolutely, everything you said there, Zoe. We don't match fund against any retrospective funds. So as you said, keep a receipt and audit trail of anything you do get, and try to limit it to small donations, i.e. not large ones.
Perfect, thank you. This through from Nikesh, this is for Dan actually. Is there a campaign strategy template used for pre-launch and mid-campaign? Did you have anything in place that you kind of used as your template of?
No, nothing that formal. Sorry. It was all just sort of like, right, I'll tell you, actually, the only strategy I had, I told myself in my head I'd do one thing every day to push it forward, whether that was another post or try and follow up on a reward, or just one thing so that I knew that something was ticking along. But I didn't have a specific written down plan. It was all just up there.
I love that. That's amazing. You're obviously somebody who can hold all of that information and be very productive with it. It might, for some people, it might pay to kind of have, I don't know, get yourself a calendar, put some deadlines in there. Make use of the Knowledge Hub as well, because there's loads of information on how to do all of that successfully. And the Learn platform that we've shared in here has the Introduction to Crowdfunding module, and then a planning, creating and running module as well. So all of the information you need to be able to actually create that successful crowdfunder is there for you to use. So definitely go and do that. This one in from Tony. Can you increase the funding if you find that it's so successful and you need more funding? So in terms of extra funding, it's all based on that initial target, but we do give you the ability to put in place something called a stretch target. So if you've hit your initial target and you're still live and funding, you can have a stretch target which comes into play, and you can just keep crowdfunding, keep raising money from the crowd. It might be in a case where you've been approved for multiple pots of money early on, that opens up a conversation about your initial target, because it might be that the potential for you to raise more is there. And obviously, if you've got these extra pots of money coming onto your page, but we have really great partnerships with all of our funding partners. So those conversations will be opened up when you put in those applications. And we've had that in a few instances, haven't we, Nadine, with Sport England and a separate funding partner, where we've had to kind of go back to the project and go, your target was 20 grand, you're being offered 20 grand in funding from 2 different people. You need to up your target to be able to secure all of the money that's being offered to you. Yeah. So a bit like Dan's first world problems. It just means you might have to think about upping that target in the first instance and working towards a slightly larger number. But it's all about putting those applications in and getting those conversations started.
Absolutely.
Can you decrease the funding if you find that it's not so successful and you might miss out on the extra funding? Again, it's a conversation, but really it's something that unless it's kind of exceptional circumstances, it's not something that we encourage or really approve very often. You really do need to put in the kind of planning into your target and what is realistic in the first instance. I can't really remember many instances where that's been approved. Nadine, I don't know about yourself, but we definitely don't encourage that in any way.
No, we don't. If anything, we try to think positively and use all the resources and wraparound support to get you to that target. So there's hopefully no need for you to consider reducing it.
Yeah, definitely. And again, as I mentioned, just make sure you're putting in that kind of that planning in place for what is realistic, what's the minimum you're going to need to make your projects happen, but how many people you might need to put that in front of in order to bring those pledges in. Okay. This is from Carl, does the 25% have to be from the 75 individual donors, or just 25% of the target provided the 75 is reached by the end? No. So, okay, that's going back to the pledge criteria. Dependent on what your initial target is, those 2 things need to be achieved. So 25% of your target raised by the set amount of supporter numbers. It can be over that, that's absolutely fine, but that is your minimum. You have to have that amount of supporters and the 25% raised before it will trigger the pledge to be put onto your page. Quite often we'll see somebody raise 25%, but they're still working on those supporter numbers. And once they've hit those supporter numbers, suddenly that pledge will appear. So you do need both. Okay, this is from Willie. Is gift aid permissible with sports crowdfunding? It's all dependent on your own organisational setup. It's not to do with the category of crowdfunding. It's to do with whether you as an organisation are eligible to receive gift aid. There is a way that you can select to actually receive gift aid on your project page. And then there are a couple of ways that you can claim that, either via HMRC, or we do provide a Swift aid collection as well. So you can collect it via your page. That is a fee-paying service, but all of that is within the help centre if you want to get a little bit more information on gift aid. Okay, just quickly looking at targets. From Katie, can I edit my target when my project is already live? That's one of the things that you cannot edit when your project is live. Most things you can go in and tweak. Images, rewards, you can add those on. Text you can change. Your target needs to be set in stone before you go live. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier, can't remember who had that question, but make sure you're putting the time in to get your realistic and minimum fund targets ready before you go live. Okay, I think we've fired through quite a few of those. Right, I think we've answered everybody's questions. I am conscious that I was determined to get this in the half an hour, but we are within the 45 minutes, so we've done pretty well. So thank you everybody for joining me. Hopefully you've all got a bit of time left on your lunch breaks to go and get a cold drink and try and cool down a little bit. And thank you Nadine and Dan for coming along as well today. And hopefully you will all that are attending be able to start your crowdfunding journeys and feel confidence in doing that. Go and look at the Learn platform and that will help you to get there. Thank you so much. Bye guys.
Cheers.
Bye.